So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on Little Leaps. I'm very excited to welcome Lucie Wheeler, founder of Recap Limited, PhD researcher, and a passionate advocate for families. She will be introducing Recap's new platform today, which is created to give parents clear evidence based guidance they can easily apply in everyday life. Our today's topic is parenting with confidence, assessing trusted evidence based information. We'll explore tips for finding reliable information, first aid at home, and how parents can use research with confidence in their parenting journey. So, without much further ado, we are going to just dive in and hear from Lucie. So, Lucie, can you just introduce yourself a bit and give us a little bit of your background and what was your parenting journey and what led you into this research, which eventually led you to creating Recap?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here today. It's really lovely to be able to talk to you. Yeah, so a bit about me. I'm a parent. First and foremost, I'm a parent myself. So I come from this from very much a lived experience perspective. My background, I worked in schools and nurseries and preschools, special needs schools, for about 13, 14 years before I actually came into research. So I was kind of on the ground in the classrooms working with the children alongside the teachers. I found myself becoming increasingly frustrated in the classroom. There were lots of things that I felt needed work on. There was lots of things that were being implemented in policy that I didn't feel like were in the best interests of the children. And it COVID happened, and I was given the opportunity to get involved in some research at my local university where I did my undergraduate and my degree and my master's. And I thought, right, this could be a pivotal moment for me. I could either carry on complaining to my colleagues about how frustrated I was about things that were happening in the classroom and hearing the frustrations directly from the parents, or I can go into research and try and be instrumental in working with teams trying to impact policy changes and work towards bringing research to the forefront. So I kind of made that jump from being in the classroom on the ground into research, and I started working at my local university, and I'm still there now. I'm a research fellow at Anglia Ruskin University now, and it's great. It gives me the opportunity to explore lots and lots of different things. And alongside working there as a member of staff, I'm also a PhD candidate there. I'm just going into my fourth year of my PhD with them. And my PhD is focused on home education and alternative education. And specifically looking at the home educator identity. So looking at how we support those parents who choose that particular educational route for their children. And then I thought, I'm not busy enough. Let's start a company as well and throw some more work into the mix. So I started Recap in 2023, and actually Recap began as very much just a information sharing hobby for me. And I would take research, simplify it, remove the jargon, and put it out on social media because I'm very aware that parents find it challenging to access trusted information online. So that's kind of where the seedlings almost of Recap came from. And over the last 2 years, it's grown to where we are now with it. But yeah, that was kind of my, I guess, educational career journey through that way. And in terms of parenting, so I had my daughter when I was 20. She's just turned 18 now. And it's been a roller coaster of experiences, as any parenting journey is. And my daughter was diagnosed as autistic and has ADHD. We didn't get that diagnosis until she was 16. So I kind of went through all of my parenting without any additional support for the challenges that we were coming across. And I actually got my own autism diagnosis last year as well. So, as a neurodivergent parent, parenting a neurodivergent child, it's all of these things kind of feed into my why I do what I do, because I experienced these challenges firsthand. I experienced not being able to find information easily online. When I first became a parent, when I was 20, like 18 years ago, the problem was that there wasn't very much information online and you kind of had to fumble your way through. Now, fast forward 18 years, we've got the opposite problem, and there's so much information online, and it is so overwhelming. And actually, we don't know where to look for that trusted, reliable information anymore because we are inundated with millions of answers to any question that we throw into the internet. So that kind of experience as a parent, and also my experience through my career trajectory going from education into research, it all kind of fed into where I am now and why I do what I do.
That's beautiful. Um, so, yeah, what you said earlier was not understanding the education system as much and what they're trying to do. It's so true, and I think it's a global problem. It is not just
Mm,
specific for a particular country, but it is a global issue. So, and the
yeah.
other thing that you mentioned about information, not having enough information online earlier versus too much information to take in. What would you suggest when there is too much information? How to take the information?
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because when you look at how much information is out there, and if you're not sure on how to look for something and see whether it's a trusted source of information, it becomes increasingly overwhelming. And actually, you think about it, like us parents, if we're in a crisis, if we want to find out some quick information because, we're at the end of our tether with something that we've found very challenging, or it's something that's very prominent in our everyday lives, we don't want to have to then trawl through pages and pages of information, conflicting information as well. It's not necessarily information that's all saying the same thing. And that's incredibly confusing. And when you're in that kind of state of overwhelm where you're in a crisis and you just need some kind of support, tips, advice on where to go, it's incredibly overwhelming. One thing that I think is really useful is kind of looking at it a bit like a traffic light system when you're looking at information online. So thinking about kind of your green flags, your green light, signs that something is going to be trustworthy, that you're reading online. So things like you want to look where the source is coming from. So sources that are clear and clearly reputable. So looking at things like the NHS or universities or government websites, professional associations, those sorts of reputable organisations that we know and trust, and we know what their sites are. So if we see the NHS site, we know that generally the information on there should be trustworthy. If there is evidence that is cited, so if they are linking to research within the information they're giving you, so peer review studies, reviews, guidelines, things like that, if something is cited, then generally that can be seen as kind of a green flag when you're looking at information. Another thing I'd say is having a balanced tone. So are they mentioning both the benefits and the limitations? They're not just kind of hyping up one side of things. If you're seeing something that's very coming across very biased, then I would be wary of it, and I would, look for other things to support what you're looking at. So having quite a balanced tone is generally a good representation of something that could be reliable. And also the author's credentials. You can see who has written what is being shared online, and that they have relevant expertise to the content that they're sharing with you. So I think all these kinds of things are kind of green flags. They're signs that it's likely trustworthy, the information that you're looking at. Then we kind of look at things like yellow flags, the amber light. Okay, so these sorts of things, I would say be cautious when you're looking at information. So if there are no references, for example, in there, so they're making claims in the content, but there's no references or citations to support the claims that are being made. Things that kind of overly promise things, this works for everybody, or this is a quick fix for something. Those kind of overly promises, I'd be cautious and kind of look a bit deeper into what I'm being told for something like that. Same again with like cherry picking specific facts. So only presenting evidence that supports one view and ignores the rest of things. So trying to build that kind of biased picture. So those sorts of things, I would say, be cautious. You need to do a little bit more reading around what you're looking at. And then things that I would say are like red flags, so really untrustworthy or likely untrustworthy, I should say. Things that are anonymously written. You can't see where it's come from, which is quite a clear one. So you don't know who's giving you the advice. Anything that seems quite pushy or seems like a sales pitch, with the main goal being trying to get you to buy a product or sign up to a service or things like that because it's going to help you or help your child. So those things that become quite pushy, I would say that be wary of. Anything that has kind of a fear-based language. So if you don't do this, then your child will fail or what have you. Any sort of fear-mongering, I would be wary of. And anything that kind of contradicts well-known established guidelines that you're already aware of. So unless there's kind of clear evidence to support why that is now different, I would be wary of something that's clearly kind of offering something that is contradicting things that we know and regularly see from a reputable source. So I think what I'd say to parents looking at information online is kind of keep these things in mind in terms of what you're looking at. And then if you're not sure, I would look for at least two kind of credible sources talking about the thing that you're searching for, and kind of weighing up what they're saying and backing them up against each other. So don't just rely on kind of one blog or one particular article that you've read. Do a bit of reading around and kind of get a general idea across the board. But it's hard. It's really hard. And nowadays, you know, the information is very clever online to present itself as being a credible, reputable piece of information. And that's what we're kind of fighting a lot at the moment with a lot of misinformation and disinformation online, which is why I'm working so hard with Recap, because I think it's really needed to have a place where people can trust what's on there and be signposted to other things that has been kind of looked at and verified beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say about all these Instagram reels and YouTube shorts? There are so many excerpts of maybe interviews, or nowadays many people are making contents, right? And when they're making contents, most of the contents do not have any evidence-based, concrete information that they are offering. They might have read it on someone else's blog, or might have copied it from someone else's reel or a short. So I'm sure you would not encourage parents to follow those reels, but in your understanding, how can we, if somebody is following some people, what are the criteria you would suggest for those people to believe in the content that they are actually watching?
Yeah, you're completely right. There's so much online now, and there's a lot of people that are taking what other people are doing and then resharing it or re-commenting on it, or kind of putting it on their own platforms. And the problem we have there is so having an evidence base for something. So evidence-based means like having a claim or a practice or a decision that has been grounded in the available research and evidence rather than it being personal opinion or guesswork, you know. So in practice, this means like drawing on high quality research, weighing up the strength of the evidence that you've got, combining the evidence with expertise and context, which is what I'll come back to answer your question, and updating decisions as new evidence comes out as well. So having something that is grounded in an evidence base is quite complex in itself. And that's why I think we don't have access to as much of it, because it does take a lot of work to, you know, encompass all of these principles around creating that strong evidence base. So when you have individuals online that are taking research, resharing it in their own way, this can sometimes not represent the research accurately, because part of having that strong evidence base and being able to be reliable with the research is combining the research itself, but actually professionals within that context interpreting it with their professional training and their practice and their expertise. So this is why research, I think, is really challenging to just hand over to people who don't work in research, and just to hand over to parents and say, oh, here's a research study that will give you your answer, because actually some of the work that goes into research is that interpretation of it, and that's what we've been trained in, and that's what we've done all of our study around, and that's what we spend the time in interpreting the findings and then relaying it across. So having a platform like the one that I'm creating, where it takes the information, simplifies it, removes the jargon, and then presents it in an easily accessible way for parents, that process is really important to get right, because we don't want to lose the meaning of the research in that translation. And that, I think, is a problem that we can have online with influencers taking things and then sharing it, because what generally tends to happen is they share their opinion on it. And so that's no longer scientific evidence-based research. That's that person's opinion on scientific evidence-based research. So I think that's the kind of line that parents need to be careful of. Is great, you know, I'm all for getting the visibility out there of research. You know, this is part of the mission that I'm on. Academics are doing an incredible job doing this amazing research and spending years and years and, you know, hours and hours of their time doing this amazing research to get some answers and support and recommendations in for our families, which is amazing. So I really want to help bring that visibility of the work that the academics are doing to a wider audience, and arguably to the audience that they're doing the research for, the parents. So I'm all for like that visibility on social media of people sharing it and talking about it, super important. But what we need to be careful of is how much is what people are saying opinion based, and how much of it is actually the research that they're talking about. And that's where I think parents need to be careful. So what I'd say is, if you are following an influencer or somebody online that is sharing research, but they aren't the researchers that conducted it, or they aren't kind of an expert within the field of the research that's been carried out, then I would listen to it, take on board their opinion, but then go and have a look for the research or for an expert within that context talking about a similar thing, to get the actual grounded evidence base of what they're talking about. And I think it's worth saying that lived experience and opinions are important, and I would never say that there isn't a place for any of this. You know, parental lived experience is incredibly valuable, but I think what we need to make sure of is that we're clear and transparent. This is evidence-based research. This is my opinion. And that's what parents need to be clear of, what they're taking in. Is it someone's opinion, or is it somebody, you know, speaking about research that they've actually conducted from a scientific perspective?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So, Lucie, you also mentioned that you got to know that you are neurodivergent and your daughter is neurodivergent as well. So, being a parent and being two people, neurodivergent people, how was your parenting journey, and what do you wish you had known when you started your parenting journey?
Well, I think I wish that I had been less hard on myself as a parent, and that I realised that parenting isn't perfect, which is the beauty of it. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect, because when we have children, we're not given a handbook to tell us exactly what we do. You know, chapter 14 will tell you what will happen when they reach the age of 2 and they have a meltdown. Like, we don't get given these sorts of things when we become parents. So parenting itself is a journey. It is a learning experience, and it doesn't ever stop. You know, my daughter's now 18, And I don't stop being her parent because she's turned 18. We are now navigating young adulthood together, as a parent. And I remember when when she'd learned to drive, and she went out the first time on her own when she got her driving license. And I remember saying to my friends, like, nobody talks about this part of parenting where you have to let go of them a little bit and, let them spread their wings, but they're not quite 18, so you still are responsible for them. That kind of age between 16 and 18, I think is really challenging, because it's that kind of crossover between them coming towards being an adult and getting more independence and more responsibility, but not quite being an adult. So it's still being a child. But yeah, parenting has been an absolute journey, and as with everyone, there's been ups, there's been downs, there's been challenges that we've had to overcome. The neurodivergency, that it's something that I think I was aware of when she was younger, but it wasn't something that was really on my radar. I didn't know a lot about autism and ADHD at that point when she was younger. I think I first started to think about looking into getting some advice when she was in year 7. So she would have been 11 years old, here in the UK. And that was when I first started thinking maybe we need to have a discussion and seek some support and some advice. But the waiting lists over here are super long. It's a long process. And that was just before we had the pandemic. So that obviously then took over everyone's attention, and it kind of went from there. And then it was after the pandemic when she went back to school initially, and she was still really struggling in the mainstream system. And home educating was something that I had thought about again back in year 7, but it wasn't something that I knew a lot about until I started researching within the field. And then she went back to school temporarily, and then I ended up deregistering her from school at 14, and she was home educated for the final 2 years of her official schooling. She did her GCSEs. She went on to do an apprenticeship in a pharmacy and got her pharmaceutical certificate in there. And then they offered her a full-time job at the end of her apprenticeship. So she went straight into a full-time job. And she's now just gone part-time and set up her own photography company because she's really interested in photography. But we did most of that right up until the age of 16 with no diagnosis, no additional support. She didn't have any HCP or anything like that. She had to do her GCSEs without any additional support around that because we didn't have a formal diagnosis. So that part of it was tough because I could see the struggles that she was having. She was telling me openly the struggles that she was having, but I felt like we didn't have anywhere that we could go to get the support. I was quite fortunate in that I'm a researcher, so I knew kind of how to dig through different bits of information. I had access to research in and around neurodiversity. When we came to home educating, the school said, right, okay, you're off the roll. See you later, basically. And then the local authority said, we hear you're home educating. Here are some links. Good luck. And then I didn't hear from them again. And then I was like, whoa, what do I do now? So I then had to overcome that challenge with the two of us because I didn't know what I needed to do next. And actually, and this is where I say lived experience and opinion has its place and it's really valuable, because at that point, when the services around me were not providing any information or support, I went to Facebook and found some Facebook groups of people who were home educating, said, I've just done this, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And that community kind of embraced me and said, right, this is what you need to do next. This is where you can go for this support. This information is available here. And they got me on the straight and narrow to finding what I needed to do next. And then I was able to access different bits of support and things like that. So in terms of like community support and that feeling, that sense of belonging, lived experience being around the community with other parents, things like that, is super, super important, especially when you're going through your parenting journey, regardless of whether you have additional challenges thrown in, like neurodivergence. I was a first time parent. I only have one child as well. So I was doing everything for the first time. And it's just that learning curve. But it's not, parenting isn't perfect, and that is something, as I said a moment ago, that I kind of wish that I reiterated to myself more frequently throughout my journey, because it's a learning curve for everybody, and actually that's how we grow as parents, is we go through, and that's how we build our resilience as parents as well. We go through these experiences, and if we have a community around us, if we have family around us, if we have that support, amazing. But it ultimately comes down to the parents, and it's you going through that journey. And if you are also being hard on yourself because you're not being perfect, that can make it a really, really unenjoyable experience. So I think my parent self now would say to any new parent, enjoy the journey, because that's what it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be challenges, and we are equipped to overcome them. It's just finding the right support around us to be able to do that in a safe space.
Yeah, that's so true. So I completely agree with what you said. Parenting is a journey, and it is a learning journey. I think I was just sharing this with my sister-in-law today in the evening. She has two young toddlers, and I have a 13-year-old. And yeah, whether it is a small baby or it is a teenager or it is an adult, as you said, we do not stop becoming a parent for our children,
Oh,
right? And
yeah,
especially when you start, um, either you don't have any idea because you have not many people around you, and sometimes in a culture like ours, we have too many people around us, and we have too much information, too many suggestions from many people.
yeah,
If every relative will come and want to give their tiny piece of advice. um, some um, some are useful and some are very
yeah,
overwhelming, and sometimes some of the suggestions may feel like you're being judged, right?
yeah,
And some of them are conflicting as well, isn't it? So
yeah.
when parents are feeling so overwhelmed with all these emotions, and especially when you are starting your journey, um, what are some quick ways you will suggest to tell if those information, if they apply, will be useful or not?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it goes back to what I was saying before about kind of having all of this information that is given to us, but actually there isn't a one answer for everybody. There isn't a one quick fix that fits everybody. And we know, and we talk all the time, don't we, about how children are unique, and the fact that every child is different, every human is different. So our approaches to things need to be tailored in that way. And absolutely, someone turning around and saying to you, oh, I tried this and it worked for me, amazing, let me think about that then. How does that work in my context, and is it worth trying? So it's kind of a big myth, isn't it, that if it works for one family, it's going to work for everybody, and that's not the case. But they may have little snippets of something in their process that might work for you. So I think it's worth questioning when somebody gives you some advice. I think it's worth questioning and thinking about, the temperament, the needs, the development of your child. Would that way of working, would that practice that they've suggested, would that work for the temperament, the needs, and the development of your child? I think also needs to take into consideration, and you touched upon it earlier, families vary in culture and values and routines and resources, and context of where they are. So that person that's giving you that advice, does that work in your culture? Does that work with the routines that you have? Do you have access to the resources that they're talking about? Are you able to apply it to your context? And I think as well, it's worth bearing in mind when somebody's giving you advice, who's giving you the advice as well, because sometimes other factors such as age, environment, the decade that they were born in, that could differ in terms of the advice that would work necessarily now. So I think it's just worth thinking, thank you for your advice when someone's given you a piece of it, and then think about that advice in the context of you and your family, where you are now, what you have access to, what you've tried before, as well. I think that's something that we definitely need to take into consideration. If it's something that we've tried before, we've tried something similar, what is it about what they're suggesting now that might be different that we can apply? But I think it's just acknowledging that there isn't a one answer for every family on every different thing, and you are allowed to think about the fact that your child is different. But there's a lot to be said for people's advice, in terms of there might be, like I said, snippets in there that you could pick and choose from their advice what you might be able to try and apply in your own context. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, and you might have asked somebody for advice because you're in the thick of a big crisis or a challenge or something, it can be really hard for you to see the straight and narrow. Your brain can quite easily get fogged over because you're so stressed and overwhelmed and in this kind of heightened sense of worry because it's your child, and that can sometimes mask over some of the more simple things that we could be trying that we haven't thought of because we're so overwhelmed. So actually it is almost taking that step back as well when someone gives you a piece of advice, and really listening and thinking, actually, I haven't thought of that, maybe I'll try it. But equally, I would also say it's absolutely okay to say, this advice isn't right for me, thank you. And you don't have to take it. It's your child at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. So, Lucy, tell me, we are talking about research and evidence-based, information to apply in our lives, right? So,
Mhm.
what are these, or how do you translate these academic research um, into simple day-to-day life activities that these parents can do in general?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of the crux of a lot of what I do, because I think it's really important, as I said, to get that academic research in front of the people that the research is about, and the people that the research is there to help. Academics are doing all this amazing work, and if that is then shut behind, a paywall for an academic journal, or behind all of the jargon that they have to have in there for it to be peer reviewed, for it to be, trustworthy, and all of that, it needs to be translated in that easily accessible way. And translating academic research into something parents can actually use is a bit like translating a foreign language and, putting it in front of somebody to be able to understand it better. So the kinds of things that I do is strip the research down to kind of really simple key things that are actually going to help the parents. So what was it studied? What was the research studying? Parents need to know what it's about, to see whether it's relevant to what they're reading and looking at. So in plain language, what was studied for the research? What was found? The key takeaways. We don't need to outline every single statistic that they've said. We don't need to outline the pages and pages of descriptors of the research. But what are the key takeaways from this piece of research? Because actually, what I also do is whenever I share that simplified version, I will share a link to the actual research as well. So the simplified version is therefore a quick, easy fix for the parents, and it might just be the answer that they need, and then that'll be the end of it. If, however, they would like to go on and read the research in any depth, then that research is always linked, and they're more than welcome to go and do that. So you don't have to include everything in it, because the options to explore it further is there. But yeah, what was studied, what they found, why it matters, I think that's a really key thing to share with parents, because actually that's the part that tells them what that impact is for the parent. So why does it matter that this research has been done? And then I try and include practical translations into, so what can you do? So this is the research, this is what they're saying about it. They're like, these were the outcomes, but what does that look like in the home? How can we translate that across, and what can you do? So then I will usually put in some tips in terms of, why don't you try this and why don't you try that? Because then if you do it like this in the home, then that is taking on board the research that we've shared. So I think it's giving those practical to do things at home, which is actually probably the most beneficial part of what I do when I'm sharing it. So the whole thing around what was studied, what they found, why it matters, it's interesting, it's necessary to know the context, but actually what parents want to know is, what can I do? How can I do this with my child? What does this look like in a family of 5 in a house, rather than in wherever the research has been carried out. So, and again, I guess this goes back to what we were saying earlier about when you have influencers and people online, it's knowing how to translate something that has been done as a research study that might have been done on hundreds and thousands of families. But what does this look like for my family in this context? And thinking of ways to explain to parents and families how they can do that in their own home, that's also quite a task. So I think that can sometimes get a bit lost if you haven't come from that background where you are immersed in research, regularly. So I think the key things for me when I'm doing it are avoiding the jargon and removing the jargon, because it's not necessary, and all it does is create that barrier. And we're trying to lift the barriers, not create them. So avoiding the jargon, keeping it concrete, the information, making sure that the translation isn't getting lost, and that you are keeping the essence of the research in your translation as well, and making sure that there are actionable takeaways for the parents to do. And that's usually kind of the process that I go through when I look at a piece of research that I want to simplify. But I'm always asking online for parents or anybody really to let me know if there is a topic or a particular research paper or article that they would like to be simplified, and to tell me, because I'm slowly building up the kind of the catalogue of simplified research at the moment. So it's like building and building. So if anybody wants to send me a message or an email or anything, and let me know if there's particular research out there that they would like to see simplified, then that can go on the list and up on the site as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Is there any myth about parenting advice online that you would ask many people to question, more parents to question?
I think probably what I said earlier about that there's one fix for everybody, that this works for everyone. Or, when you see online quick fixes, I think we all know that parenting, there are no quick fixes, because there are no 2 children the same. So what would be seen as maybe a quick fix for one family may not necessarily work for the next family, and wouldn't be a quick fix, and may not necessarily work at all. So I think if somebody's promising you to, give this bedtime hack has changed everything and it will change your life kind of thing, I would just be a bit mindful of that overpromise and do a little bit of work and reading into it. So I think that would be kind of my biggest thing, is just be aware of the diversity needed in parenting. But, as I said, these are all really useful things to take on board. A part of the job of a parent is to take all of this information and then make it work for your family and your child. So I guess us, I'm just thinking out loud now, but I guess us as parents are a bit like researchers, aren't we? Because we get all of this information, we synthesize it, and we make it work for our context. And we're all doing it as parents. But as a researcher, we've had the luxury of being taught it and having the training and everything. As parents, you're kind of thrown into it and work it out on the way. So I think that we do have to do that. And the more that parents are critical about what they see, rather than taking everything at face value, I think that's important. Because whereas before, when we didn't have access to so much information, it wasn't I guess, as important to be critical because there was less of it. But now when we're being faced with so much information and so much conflicting information, I think the first thing any parent should do when they read something is switch on that criticality and just say, right, hang on a minute, what are they saying? Where is it coming from? Have I seen anything else on this topic? And go from there like that.
So tell me, Lucy, something about the project that you work on, your you know venture recap.
Yeah, so oh gosh, where to start? And try and keep it simplified.
I'll
But
call
yeah,
it your
recap.
second baby. Yeah, and
Pardon?
I'll call it your second baby.
My second baby, yeah, it absolutely is. It's recaps just it's all about bridging that gap between research and real life for families. I guess that's the kind of crux of it, simplifying that information. But there are lots of other things that I do as part of recap. So that simplifying of information and getting it out there is kind of the main offering, the main free offering that is there for parents. But there are other things that we're kind of doing behind the scenes. We have a podcast. So having the podcast gives us another platform and another way to get information out there. And the podcast is a real mix of having researchers, experts and professionals on there, and also parents sharing their lived experience. So again, going back to the importance of having everyday parents come on and saying, this is what I've dealt with, and this is how I've overcome this challenge, because that can be equally as helpful. But as I said before, it's that transparency of being clear. This is a parent talking about their experience. This is a psychologist talking about their research, the difference in that. So I have the podcast. I offer tailored one-to-one support for parents and families as well, because I think it's really important for parents to be able to have a sounding board, to be able to talk things through with somebody that they trust. So the kind of goal of recap is to make that knowledge and information accessible, useful, so that families feel informed and supported and confident in their own parenting. And yeah, the next big thing to launch with Recap is the hub. So this is what I'm currently working on. This is probably the biggest thing that we're going to launch as well. And this is going to be a platform that's dedicated to connecting parents with trusted evidence-based information in a way that's clear, easy to use, easy to apply, and just bringing together research from the fields of education, child development and parenting. And kind of the idea behind this came from the fact that I have a background in research, but also those real world conversations that I've had with parents. I saw so much valuable research being done, but being hidden behind kind of academic journals and things like that. And then at the same time, parents were telling me they were overwhelmed with the conflicting advice online. And I just wanted to build something that built a bridge between the two and gave academics the platform to share the amazing work they're doing, and gave parents a platform to access it easily. So that's kind of what we're working on at the moment. And it really encompasses the ethos of Recap, because it's working as a research project. The development of the hub is working as a research project. So I've been doing focus groups with parents and families, focus groups with academics, and they are into the design of the platform. So actually, when it launches and goes live next year, it will have been designed collaboratively with the users that will be using it. So actually, it really encompasses what we stand for, and Recap, with the importance of research playing a role in the development of what we're doing. The workshops that we offer, I'm a mental health first aider and do health and wellbeing workshops for children and for students. They're all coming from an evidence base on that front. We do first aid courses as well, because I think this is a really important life skill. And this is something that parents quite often say to me that is missing in the school curriculum, these key life skills. So I'm also working on building the catalogue of training and support for families in terms of life skills. And one of those is the first aid offering that we have currently at the moment as well. So there's lots going on. at Recap. Lots in the pipeline and lots of ways for people to get involved. So yeah, it's exciting.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I would love to go to the website and see what's going on, because I know for sure what you're doing is so critical for parents to understand and apply it in their day-to-day lives, and that will make a change, not just in their lives, but their child's life, most importantly.
Yeah,
So you
yeah, I hope so.
first aid at home. That's
Yeah.
your first area that you are focusing on. So, could you elaborate a little bit about what you are going to do in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, we offer first aid generally. So we can go into organisations, businesses, schools, nurseries, things like that, and provide the first aid training for employees through that route. Work a lot with kind of schools and nurseries generally because it encompasses what RECAP stands for. But as a first aid trainer, can go in anywhere and teach first aid. But actually, what I'm most excited about is the family offering that I've been developing, which is getting out there in the community and teaching first aid skills, not just to parents, but to the children as well. And I think it's really important. And children at any age can get involved. You know, there is no age limit to starting to learn. We know that children, really young children, they learn just by being around things. They learn in that immersive environment. And we know how, and I know kind of your background with Montessori, we know how important that environment is to a child's learning. So having that prepared environment around them, having the children seeing their brothers and sisters, seeing their parents, seeing other children doing first aid, even the really little ones being involved in it can be amazing because they're just taking in those bits of information. So the really young children, and then as they get older, we start introducing the actual context of the learning. We start introducing the techniques of the learning and actually refining the skills that are needed to develop them further, and then they can grow like that. So we're just working on developing these packages at the moment, which will be going out into the community to offer the first aid training, and then also like a bespoke within the home. Because what I also think is really important is within a family context is understanding your family's needs, so where your priorities need to be. So within the kind of bespoke packages, you'll have your core elements that will come with every bit of training, like your CPR and recovery position, things like that, that everyone needs to know. But then you'll be able to add on a couple of additional elements that are right for your family. So, for instance, if you have a family member that has an EpiPen, you might add on the EpiPen training for your particular thing because you're likely to need it within your context. If you are a family that has quite young children, you might add on like bumps to the head and head injuries and things like that because they're likely to toddle over and fall over more frequently than if you had a family of teenagers. If there's stroke in the family, you might add on the element to how we deal with stroke and things like that. So being able to make a bespoke family package makes it accessible for families to do within their home with their children and the parents. And also it makes it more affordable because then you're not having to pay for a whole first aid course with elements that you may not necessarily use. You can just focus in on what works for your family. And that individualized way of learning is something that I'm really passionate about in terms of how our children learn and how they learn at school and things like that. And I think that should reflect across in other things as well. So I've tried to replicate that with the first aid offering because I think it's really important for you to really know the skills that you are more likely to use within your home context. So that's something that we're working on at the moment as well.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a great thought. So thank you so much, Lucy. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I loved the fact that you are totally you have dedicated your time and life towards helping families to understand what will be right for their specific
Yeah.
family, right? It is, as you very rightly said, that it's not one medicine for all. Every family has
Mhm.
different conditions, different circumstances, and each family needs to have a very tailored or very specific um, I would call it, I wouldn't call it suggestion, but very specific ideas or solutions for their own personal issues or their own personal complications or their own personal challenges, right? So I
Mm.
truly believe that your work recap is definitely going to offer that to every family, and I wish you good luck. Please share the link with me so that we also I am going to forward it to the other people here. And yeah, yeah, let's try making this possible for every family together. You being from a very sound research background and we from a Montessori background, everybody is looking for the same objective to bring
Absolutely.
beautiful, yeah, beautiful world for every child that is coming into this world, right? So
Absolutely. And this is something that I say quite often is we're all on the same mission. We're all trying to do the same thing. So we should be doing it collectively as a big community rather than fighting against it. So the more partnerships, collaborations, and support that we can give one another, the better.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Montessori's vision was world peace, and without collaboration, it is not possible. So, yes, people from any background can actually be part of this and support each other. Yeah. Yeah, thank you,
That's
Lucy.
lovely.
Yeah, it was lovely talking.
Thank you so much.
I had a lot of fun, and I
Thank
have
you so much for having me.
so many things to learn from you. So, thank you. And
Thank you so much for having me.